Hello and welcome to another episode of Starside Chat. I'm one of your hosts, Aaron, and with me as always is Zach. How's it going, Zach?
Pretty good. We don't have a lot of new games coming out lately, but there are a few that we can talk about. But yeah, we got some news.
Some news,
big news,
and some things that we've been playing and watching. But yeah, we said we were going to start doing a Game of the Year watch, which I have still not come up with a name yet. But
it's tough in January.
So it's not really going to start popping off, I think, until February.
February is a big month for releases this year, for sure.
So we'll keep our eye on that. But yeah, should we just dive into the news?
Yeah. So Xbox and Bethesda are going to have a developer direct, a certain sort of games showcase on January 25th, which is not going to have Starfield. Apparently, Starfield's going to have its own, like, separate little sort of game showcase.
They made it very clear. There was like a tweet where they were like, "Hey, we're gonna have this big showcase, and it's gonna have Redfall and Minecraft Legends and Elder Scrolls Online and all this stuff." And then in a follow-up tweet, they were like, "Also, Starfield is not going to be at this. Just FYI, that's going to need its own full showcase just on Starfield," which I think is good.
The quote was, "To dedicate the proper amount of time for a deep dive into Bethesda Game Studios' Starfield, a standalone show is in the works."
Yeah.
Which, strange, because I feel like we already sort of had a, deep dive, like, last year, and now we're just waiting for the game to come out. But, I mean, I guess I'm not opposed to more...
we definitely had a walkthrough of a mission, but I still feel like we haven't seen, like, the true depth and breadth of that game.
Sure.
So I'm interested to see. I really want to know. I don't think we're going to get another like walkthrough mission, but I do think we're getting like a systems walkthrough of like, here is a fully created character and here is you interacting with your ship and things like that, which is going to be great. But I am also excited for this other, as we talked about, I think last week, neither of us really cared about Redfall. I think most of the world did not care about Redfall. Until we realized that it was not just going to be a Left 4 Dead, it was also going to be sort of a Far Cry. And so we're going to get a lot more information about that at this show press conference.
Yeah, so Redfall, like I went back and read that article that you referenced in the show last week, or 2 weeks ago, whenever that was. And yeah, it seems sort of similar to... Borderlands as well, where you have like 4 different characters as 4 different classes.
Yeah, that's actually that's a good
and
description.
You might even be able to play it through in co-op. I'm not sure exactly, but I'll be interested to see.
I think that is true. I think actually Borderlands is a very apt comparison, because I think when you play, you're locked into a character, but you can play with friends, and they each play one of the 4. So I think actually that is a very a good description of it.
Yeah. So, and I don't know if it has ever really been clear based on what they've shown so far that was the case, and that it was not just like a co-op Left 4 Dead style game.
Have they shown non-cinematic trailers? I don't remember.
Now that you say that, I don't know, actually.
I maybe have just checked out every time they've shown a trailer because I was not interested in it. Like, that was a time where I could just look back at my computer and start writing notes. Yeah. So maybe they have like revealed this to us in the past, but this will be interesting. I don't think anything else at this press conference, though, do you? You could probably care about the Elder Scrolls stuff. Yeah,
I was going to say, I'll be interested to see what they have for Elder Scrolls Online stuff. But other than that, like, I don't really care about Forza or Minecraft or whatever else
Minecraft Legends is not really doing it for me, I have to say. Like, I like Minecraft as a brand, but I think I like the pure experience of just being in Minecraft as opposed to these weird side games like the Telltale game or other random stuff they've been putting out. So, but the Redfall thing, I predict they know Redfall is the thing most people care about, so I bet that will be the last thing they show.
Yeah, that's probably true. It a little bit ties in maybe to one of our other big stories this week, because like we talked about how Redfall is kind of a Far Cry style game, supposedly. Speaking of Far Cry style games, Ubisoft has canceled 3 unannounced games, which is a little like, I mean, that's info for the investors and the board, because why would you even like publicly announce that 3 games that nobody knew about that haven't been announced are now just not going to happen? It's sort of not really relevant information for everybody else, I guess, but the relevant information is they delayed Skull and Bones again.
No,
I don't. It's like a joke at this point. Like,
I really don't know why they keep bothering.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, so they've canceled these other games, but Skull and Bones, they are bound and determined to one day release that thing.
I wonder,
but they just can't get around to it.
I don't know what. Like, maybe there is something secret in that game that is just like, people keep playing it being like, man, there is a secret sauce to this, but we can't really figure it out. But I don't know why you would be spending all this money on it. Like, I can't imagine the amount of money they're spending on it over the past couple of years.
Well, and that's the problem here, is because Ubisoft is struggling because they said some of their games from last year didn't perform well, like Mario & Rabbids Sparks of Hope and Just Dance 2023. Which is a shame because Mario & Rabbids is actually great.
Yeah, I agree.
I love that game. And everyone is sort of taking this news as, Ubisoft's formula has become a little bit played out, and they've just sort of boxed themselves in, and now all they do is Assassin's Creed and Far Cry games, and they're basically the same game, just one's third person and one's first person.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what Redfall's supposed to be, but I feel like people still like that style of game.
I agree.
Maybe it's just me.
I'm all about that. Like, Far Cry 3 and Far Cry 4 are 2 of my favorite games. Like, dropping in and just like the fact that in those 2 games, not like in Redfall or Far Cry 5, where you were kind of locked into stuff whenever you walked into a new zone, but in 3 and 4, you could just not do the story after a while and just go after things to increase your character. Like, hunt the special animals that you crafted your like big holsters from and stuff. And it was great. And then you would do the story and you'd be super overpowered. And they gave you all these fun tools, like basically a physics sandbox of just like, well, you can drive a car off a cliff and then have a wingsuit. Like, it was a great time. And I would do it again.
I mean, I'm of 2 minds about this because, like, we talk a lot about how we do like that formula of like open world game. We like the Far Cry style game, but if they show me a trailer for another Far Cry game, my eyes glaze over a little bit.
I mean, that's true.
I'm trying to think of the last like Ubisoft game that wasn't Mario & Rabbids that I had any level of excitement for.
Yeah, neither of us have really been on the Assassin's Creed train.
It's because I feel like they've just sort of tapped that well too much.
Yeah.
And now, like, it's just another Assassin's Creed game. Mm-hmm. But I like that style because I buy, like, Ghost of Tsushima, and I bought that Ghostwire Tokyo, which is a little bit different. It's not quite the same style.
But you're still roaming around in open world. And
yeah. And we're talking about how we're excited for Redfall because it's almost more like if they say it's a Far Cry style game, but it's not Far Cry, I'll be like, ooh, I'm into that. But when they announce the next Far Cry, I'll be like, I probably won't play that.
I don't know.
It's a weird thing.
I don't know why I didn't get the latest Far Cry game that was like in Cuba where you had jetpacks and you could get like a little dog with a wheelchair. On paper, it sounds like something I'd be really into, but
yeah,
I don't know. It's just maybe it's just too tapped. I think you're right. It's something that there needs to be a new piece to the formula for me to like get interested in it again.
And separate to us and where we're at with them, like generally speaking, if you sort of pay attention to like the critical reception and just like people that talk about the games industry, when they announce another Assassin's Creed or one comes out, there's like no buzz at all. So, I mean, I guess like Ubisoft is struggling because they've sort of tapped out their big franchises and they're doing nothing with the Tom Clancy franchises. They've got those that they could work with. They've got like Splinter Cell and Ghost Recon and all of that stuff, and they've kind of not really done anything with those.
I think there is something Splinter Cell in the works, aren't they? Are they?
I mean, maybe it's one of the unannounced games they canceled. I don't know.
I feel like I remember hearing about that, where they were either like remaking the original, or they were like, because I remember it was a big deal. They were replacing the voice of Sam Fisher with someone, but
yeah,
now I don't.
I
really
vaguely remember that as well, but I couldn't tell you what that was. But
that was a great. I mean, I played that one that had that great dynamic multiplayer where two people were mercs versus spies. There's that new multiplayer game that is basically just that. I think we've talked about on the podcast before, but I mean, I like a stealth game. I love a cool stealth game, and you very rarely get modern adaptations of that. Usually, stealth games are in the olden days, like that Plague Tale is a great example of a good stealth game that's been recent. But
yeah,
a stealth game like a Metal Gear 5 style game would be very cool.
yeah, and they've also thrown a lot of money at Skull and Bones,
Yeah.
and what is that? Beyond Good and Evil 2 that just like nobody's heard of or
I don't know if that
in
ever is
years.
yeah. There's been so many. I think there's been like 5 E3s since we've heard anything about that.
Yeah, it's been like 5 years since they last talked about that game,
I
but
don't know.
supposedly it's still in the works somewhere.
I guess.
So they're throwing a lot of money at games like that. And like it seems like nothing's happening with them, and they're canceling these other games, and they've got games that aren't doing as well as they thought. So it just seems like maybe management is really terrible at Ubisoft. And so I initially, when I saw this, I was like, ooh, somebody's going to swoop in and buy Ubisoft because they have all those big franchises. But also, like, if they can't sell an Assassin's Creed anymore, like, does anyone want those franchises? I don't even know. Maybe they can work some magic and reboot them, or like change something about them.
I think part of it
Or
is
just
also
like-
just they expanded too much. Like they have so many studios now. Like there's Ubisoft Montreal, there's the one in France, I think, and then I think there's one in Texas, I want to say as well, maybe. And I think one in Seattle, I think. Because they were, I mean, for a while they were the hottest stuff. Like everyone loved Assassin's Creed games, and they were pumping them out. And you would get a Far Cry game, and then like a year later you would get like a kind of a twist on the Far Cry game. Like there was Far Cry 4, and then there was Far Cry Primal, and then there was Far Cry 5, and then there was Far Cry whatever the one in the post-apocalyptic future was. And like it was a well-oiled machine, but unfortunately they were making things that no one cared about, and so now they're kind of like floundering.
Yeah, it's a weird place to be, and I don't know what's going to happen with them, but I also don't know what their sales are like. Maybe Assassin's Creed is doing fine, and it's just like not really getting as much love from critics as
I think people loved
they would
Ragnarok. They put so much content in that game. I feel like they were releasing content
Valhalla?
for that game. Yeah, Valhalla, yeah.
Yeah, and that's like another thing. I think like, and this speaks to like a problem in the industry as a whole, and not just with Ubisoft, but like we're in a weird state where games are taking longer and longer to make, and they're more and more expensive, and like, but the industry is also trying to move towards like less crunch and like being better for the employees. And I'll put the word out there to all the developers everywhere. It's okay to make a game that's not 100+ hours.
Yeah.
Like, feel free to make a game that's like 20, 30 hours. Like, you don't need to spend like 10 years working on a game that's like gonna take 80 to 150 hours to complete. Like, you could, if the cost is too high and they're wanting to raise the price of games, and nobody wants that, and also it's taking people forever to make them and they keep having to delay them, people look at Assassin's Creed Valhalla. That's like, I don't know how long. Like our friend was playing that game. He was like 150 some hours in, and I don't even know that he had finished the main story. And it's just like, I look at that and go, I will never finish that game, so I'm not even going to bother buying it. So
that said, though, I would not mind spending 150 hours in Starfield.
Sure. Yeah, it's weird. It's almost like, so I found Ghostwire Tokyo to be refreshing because the main story of that game was like 12 hours maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But if you wanted to do like 100% it and you wanted to like platinum it the way I did, I spent probably a solid like 40 hours or so in it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a little also like the formula of Skyrim was great because there were like different quest lines. If you wanted to do just the main quest line, that wouldn't take too terribly long.
That's true.
But if you wanted to do everything, you'd spend a lot of time in that world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's almost smarter to like break it up and have like multiple things. But even then, I like we get back to the point where the developers are having to spend like 7 to 10 years working on a game instead of the old like 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, it takes an army now.
Yeah, so I don't know. I feel like people want games that are shorter, and the developers are still trying to pump out these like enormous, extremely long games.
Yeah.
And I feel like I would be okay if they cut the development time and the overall length of the games in half and you started working on that instead. But maybe that's just me.
Let's talk about Stadia for a second. RIP Stadia. Did you
RIP
see that article
Stadia.
about how they released their final game this week?
Yeah, what was that? It was like a snake game?
Yeah, it's a little snake game that is for some reason being released this week, like 4 days before the whole service just goes offline. But I mean, they released it, so I don't know if it's free or if you have to pay for it.
I thought I saw it was free to play.
Yeah.
But one last little hurrah with Stadia before the servers go offline for good.
But not the controllers.
The controllers. This is something people have been asking for even well before Stadia was inevitably going to shut down.
Mm-hmm.
People have been wanting them to enable like the Bluetooth on the controller so that you could use them on PC and maybe even like your consoles as like a normal Bluetooth controller. And Stadia is finally going to make it happen. Like just before everything is shut down for good, they're going to provide you a way to enable the Bluetooth so you can use it like a normal controller. So you can sort of keep Stadia alive in some weird semblance, but also you don't have landfills filling up with tons of controllers, which I guess is good. But yeah, I like the Stadia controller. So having an additional option to use when I'm playing PC games is good for me.
I'll be excited. I have a very old school Afterglow, if people are aware of that brand, like Xbox controller that I use for my PC when I'm playing stuff on like Steam. But I prefer the Stadia controller, and I would love to be able to use something wireless. So I'm all about this. I hope it's not like super buggy. It's just like very easy to do.
Yeah, I mean, you could already use it with Steam. It just had to be wired.
Right, yeah.
So now it'll just be nice to not have to use it with the wire. So being able to use it wirelessly will be great. What is this Dungeons and Dragons stuff?
Okay, let's get into this. How aware of this have you been over the past week?
0%.
So, Dungeons and Dragons has gone through a couple different iterations, and the most recent one was 5th edition. And it kind of blew up at 5th edition for a number of reasons. Firstly, Stranger Things happened, which was like, oh, everyone is like Dungeons. They're playing it in that, and a new generation is like, oh, this is interesting. Secondly, real play podcasts started. So like Critical Role is very popular. I don't subscribe to that, but even like super old school. I think the first people I ever heard playing D&D was maybe when I was in college or even high school, when the guys who made that webcomic, Penny Arcade, they released a thing where they were playing Dungeons and Dragons. I was like, man, this is pretty cool. And then also, obviously, like the Adventure Zone is very big. There's a number of like content creators that now make their money off of being in Dungeons and Dragons. And the reason they can do that, and the reason that like there's like such a rich community of people making like other manuals for Dungeons and Dragons, like I follow a bunch of people on Instagram who just like make custom items that slot into Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. Like they make really cool artwork for it, and they like put out the stats, and you can buy from their Patreon and stuff. The reason all of that's possible is because of the OGL, the Open Game License, which happened at 5th edition. 5th edition. So the OGL was basically like, hey, you can make stuff that slots into our system, and basically it saves you from being like copyright stricken. So Critical Role and like the Adventure Zone, all these people that play Dungeons and Dragons, they're not like, they don't have to pay money to D&D to do that. To Wizards of the Coast, I should say, which is owned by Hasbro. Additionally, like people with Patreons who like make maps that you can use and stuff. You don't have to give Wizards of the Coast any money for that. That was what it was. So then, and also I should say another important factor in this, another important player is Paizo, who we've talked about on the podcast before. They made Pathfinder, which is kind of it uses the language of Dungeons and Dragons. Like, you know, there are dwarves and elves and things, but it was a big shift away. I think it happened in 4th edition. People were like, oh, Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition is like not great. And so people just decided to make their own version of Dungeons & Dragons, which they, again, could do under the OGL. And they made Pathfinder. And the OGL is supposed to be not revocable. And it's, you know, to infinity, it will be acceptable to use these things. Paizo also made that Starfinder, which we talked about, which is like a space version. Dungeons & Dragons is having a new edition now, which they're calling 1D&D. And it was leaked, I think, earlier, like last week or maybe the week before, that they're coming up with a new OGL, an OGL 1.1, that is a lot stricter. Basically, it disallows, if you make a certain amount of money, I think it's like $75,000 a year off of D&D, you have to like tell Wizards of the Coast that that's happening or something. But then if you make like $750,000 a year, or maybe it's not that big, I forget the exact numbers, but at some point you have to start paying Wizards of the Coast if you make some amount of money, which people are not into. Another part of this provision is that part of it made it seem like the original OGL was going to be invalidated, which was supposed to be impossible by this new OGL 1.1, or they're calling it 2.0. People were not into this because Pathfinder is basically built off of the OGL, and Paizo is like a very beloved community of people who like make stuff, and they've made tons of like adventure modules and things. Basically, it was a bad time for everybody, and so there were a bunch of campaigns that were like, "Hey, Wizards of the Coast is having this is bad stuff." So everybody delete your D&D Beyond subscriptions, because that's like where it will really hurt them. And so a ton of people did. Apparently, an insider said that like it was in the 5 digits, the number of account deactivations that they got within the span of like 3 days. And I guess that made the higher ups at Wizards of the Coast be like, "Oh man, what we've done is bad." So they were gonna have a big reveal party for their new OGL on Thursday, but they canceled that live stream because they realized everything was going sideways. And they put out a statement like, "Hey," their statement is bad. Their statement, it starts with them being like, "Hey man, hey guys, we rolled a critical 1. Whoops." And it ends with this really infuriating thing where basically like, "Hey, we didn't mean to do any of this stuff. We're just like trying to figure it out, man. We're all good. We're one of you." And it ended with them being like, "You know what? You're going to hear some people say that they won and we lost this, but that's not true. Actually, they won, but we won too, because we heard from the community." And it was just like a bad time. Paizo responded during all of this, and they were like, "Hey, guess what? We're going to throw the gauntlet down, because the person who wrote OGL 1 now works for us and is basically like, I think that they're maybe like their lawyer or something. So they're all about litigating Wizards of the Coast if they decide to go through with this." And they made what they're calling the open RPG something. The initials are ORC, which is like an open game license that's actually open. And all these other companies signed on for that. I don't know if I've done a great job of explaining this, but I have been talking for a while. But that's all to say that weird stuff is happening. And I feel like Wizards of the Coast is not really backing down from this. They're just kind of waiting to see if the heat dies down. But 1D&D might be something that kind of fizzles out if they decide to go this route, because people are... The RPG community, I feel like, is a very open community that wants, like, small creators to have a say in stuff. And, like, so many people have these, like, small Patreons where they're making, like, adventure content that's very interesting and unique. And if that happens to be, like, anti what Hasbro wants at the end of the day, they might shift over to something, a new version, like something that Paizo makes, like a Pathfinder thing. And I don't know, 1D&D might not have like the big commercial, like they're really primed. There's going to be a Dungeons and Dragons Amazon show, I think I read, that's in the works right now, as well as that movie's coming out this year. So Dungeons and Dragons is really having a moment, and this misstep is really like besmirching that, I feel like people right now don't like Wizards of the Coast and are like actively looking for alternatives. Like I use that Foundry thing for Dungeons and Dragons, and on that subreddit, they're just like, I don't know if like Foundry's going to work in the new OGL. Like, I don't know if they're going to take away us being able to use the Dungeons and Dragons license. So everybody shift over to this basically. And there's like a bunch of support for community for Pathfinder 2.0. But yeah, it's something I've been following a lot this week, and I thought it was interesting, and I wanted to talk about it. Do you have any questions?
Well, I was going to say, I feel like, they're not going to put up with it, and they, like, another thing will sort of rise from the ashes of this.
And that's what the original Pathfinder was, a rising from the ashes of 4th edition, or maybe 3rd edition. I don't remember, but basically 4th edition happened and people were like, this is bad. And so they made Pathfinder, and it kind of forked. There was a fork, and now there's Pathfinder 2nd edition, which people are all into, people love. It's kind of a crunchier version. There's more math involved, but actually this week I've been trying to learn how to play it. It's not as bad. It's actually got some very interesting things that are better than 5th edition. But I don't know. I was really excited to check out that 1D&D virtual tabletop, but now it seems like, I don't know. It seems like they're really trying to nickel and dime you. There was a quote from the CEO of Wizards of the Coast, or maybe it was Hasbro, some woman who was like, yeah, we need to like monetize D&D like video games are monetized. Like we're only seeing the initial purchase of the rule books, and we need to like see purchases after the fact, basically microtransactions, which I think is what 1D&D is trying to do. They are trying to migrate everything to be online, where like your characters are online, your books are online, and you use their virtual tabletop so that you can basically buy hats for your characters, which the community is not into.
Yeah. Start getting into like weird NFT areas.
Exactly. And they were of the mind when they put out this thing, this like apology, basically. It was very poorly written. They were like, yeah, this new OGL is trying to prevent NFTs from happening or something, or like to prevent hate speech, which no, like I don't know what about like, oh, content creators have to start paying us when they make a certain amount of money prevents NFTs.
Yeah. How does that in any way related?
But I don't know. I think they were just trying to use buzzwords to get people on their side. But it's kind of a weird, messy situation that's still unraveling. And I really don't know. To me, all the cynical like comments I'm reading are like, yeah, they're just kind of waiting. They're going to wait until it dies down, and then they're going to push this out. And because I think the main push of this is they want money from Critical Role. They know that Critical Role is a huge business. People are watching their live streams. They had, I believe Critical Role has a Dungeons and Dragons TV show on Amazon that's like based on their characters. And Wizards of the Coast is seeing none of that money. And they want to dip their hand into that. They want some money in their coffers for that, even though they're not doing anything with it. So I don't know. It's interesting.
Like,
it's something I wanted to talk
about. Using our
about.
property, we should get a kickback for that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
So
yeah, that's really dumb.
More to come. I'll update. I'll read more about it, and if there are updates, I'll talk about it on the podcast. But it's something to be aware of. If you are interested in Dungeons and Dragons, you're looking to get into role playing, maybe check out Pathfinder before you check out Dungeons and Dragons, because most of that stuff is free. Their like pocket edition of their core rulebook is like $15, I think. Especially right now when they came out with their big. Paizo wrote a really good response letter when they were announcing their like their open RPG, something that starts with C, contract maybe. But they wrote this really great article, and they were also like, hey, guess what? If you want any of our books right now, use the promo code OpenDND, and you'll get 25% off basically anything in our store. So if you're looking to get into role-playing, maybe check out something like Starfinder or Pathfinder 2nd edition, or 1st edition, really, and you can get some discounts, and it'll be a good time for you in the coming days.
All right, and with that, let's move into the games that are out this week, or I guess this last week now. Do you watch One Piece at all?
I have watched the first 100 episodes, maybe. I stopped when they were in that desert place where it wasn't raining, and I never kind of hopped back on. But it was a period of my life where I was making a bunch of salads and watching One Piece, and it was a great time.
It's been years, but I watched very little, just some of One Piece. Anyway, One Piece Odyssey, a turn-based RPG, is now out. And that's, I don't know, some JRPGs I feel like get really grindy, especially, it seems like more the turn-based ones get really grindy for some reason. But also I don't have any like real connection to One Piece, so I'm gonna pass on this one. But it seems like it's reviewing fairly well. And then another little game, Lone Ruin. I believe this is like a game that was like produced by like Super Rare Games or like Special Reserve, like one of those game companies that produces physical copies of indie games. And it's like a twin stick shooter roguelite, and it looks pretty cool. It's got like kind of a nice art style to it. It's sort of vaporwave. Kind of vaporwave, and I think the soundtrack is pretty vaporwave as well. I've heard good things about it, have not played it, but it seems like a pretty good one. And then the other one that's maybe the most notable of these three, just because I feel like I've heard about it more than the others, is Vengeful Guardian Moonrider, which is out on, I believe, PC and Switch. I don't know if it's on the other consoles, but this is like a retro sort of Sega Genesis, Super NES era style game that is very reminiscent of like a combination of something like Mega Man and Ninja Gaiden, and it's sort of a side-scrolling platformer. It's supposed to be pretty short too. I think you can maybe complete it in like 2 to 3 hours, but
that's what
people were into it.
That's the one criticism I've read about it, or not even a criticism really, because I think it was that Kyle Hilliard guy was tweeting about it, about how it's like very short and sweet. Like it's kind of crazy how short it is, but it also, like, as you're playing it, you're loving it, and it looks really cool.
It does look cool. It's only like $15, I think, right now. It might be like an introductory sale. It's a weird thing where it launches on sale for some reason, and then it's like a couple bucks more to get it once that ends. But it does look cool. I like the art style of it. I think you can use, if you play it on Switch, you can use that old sort of Super NES wireless controller if you bought that for Nintendo Online. Cool. So yeah, that's a cool little thing if you're really trying to get into the spirit of like an old game. So this is one that may be talked about later on in the year. I don't know if you want to pencil this one into our like top 10 somewhere, just because it's sort of the first notable game that's out, but
I'm putting it in.
All right. So far, the Starside Chat game of the year is Vengeful Guardian Moonrider.
This is the top game of the year so far.
Top game of the year. For now, it's going in. And then another game that I can bring up here, I added it into the what we're playing watching, even though I've not been playing it, because it's not actually out yet, but a game called Ravenbound. Have you heard of this?
No.
So this, I watched one of the streamers that I follow off and on was playing this the other day. I guess they got like an advanced copy from the developer, and I guess it's maybe early access, but like not everyone can get to it or access it or play it. But it's basically an open world roguelite game, which is something I don't know that I've seen before.
Yeah.
Normally they're like more sort of Hades style, where it's like a sort of isometric or even like a side-scrolling game if it's going to be a roguelite. But so it's very like fantasy looking, and you can get like, before you start each run, you can kind of re-roll and get like a different character. And I saw one of them, it was like it almost looked like a Khajiit was in the game as a playable character. But they have like different stats and stuff. And then you select sort of which place in the world you want to jump in. And then you start out flying around. So basically you fly as a raven, and then you can land and do some combat and pick up some upgrades and like additional weapons and stuff like that. So you're sort of building up your character, and there are bosses to fight. And then you can go, I think there are different like areas you go to be able to fly again as a raven. You like interact with it, and it'll send you up into the sky as a raven. You can fly around. But I like the graphics of it. I think it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
It is coming to Steam, but I don't think they've said when. Like, I don't think it has an official release date just yet. But it seems like a cool concept. I'm not like big on roguelike games, but this one seems different enough and interesting enough that I might try this out when it comes to Steam.
Yeah, I'm watching the trailer now, and it looks very interesting.
Yeah, it seems like a very cool game. And the open world is also not procedurally generated. It's like, it's been, carefully designed. And so you're not necessarily experiencing a completely different world every time. So you can kind of know, okay, I can go here to do this or whatever. Or maybe like some of the things within the open world might be different each time, but like the world itself should be the same. Yeah, it seems interesting to me.
Huh, this kind of came out of nowhere. I haven't heard of this.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of it until I saw that guy streaming. I was like, what is this? But it looked cool, like just watching him play it. So I might check that out.
Well, what have you been watching and playing?
Well, I have dipped my toes back into some games I didn't finish last year. I've played more Horizon Forbidden West and more Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Houses. I'm trying to finish both of these before Fire Emblem Engage comes out, which I don't think is going to happen. I checked where I was at. I looked up the walkthrough for Three Hopes to see like what chapter I was on, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm not as close to finishing this as I thought I was. But I've been a little bit more focusing on Horizon because I think I am closer to the finish of that, and also I would rather finish that between the two of them.
I'm so curious about the ending of that game. I haven't looked it up or anything, but I would be interested to know if you could tell me if they left it open for a sequel.
Having not finished it yet, I'm sure that they do. Like, I'm sure this will be at the very least a trilogy.
Yeah.
But I got to the part in the main story where you learn to override the flying ones. Ooh. There's like I think it's a sun wing that you get. And it's like a really cool moment because you get on the sun wing and you first are able to fly around. And then it has you land on one of those tall necks and override the tall neck. And then it teaches you, oh, so you're used to like when you override one of the other ones, you can use it as a mount. And so you'll hit the down on the D-pad to like summon your mount and it'll run over to you and you can jump on the back and ride away. But when you do that with the Sunwing, it will literally swoop down, grab you by the shoulders, and flip you up onto its back. Whoa. And you'll just be flying, and it's pretty cool. So yeah, that was fun. And I'm basically I'm at the point now where I'm just like trying to mainline the story to finish it. Yeah. And I'm not doing a lot of the side stuff. But It's very cool. Every time I come back to the game, I'm always like blown away by the visuals and just how incredible the like character models, facial animations, and just like the lighting and textures look. It's like one of those games I've started taking a lot more screenshots of, especially like when it gets to like when you're higher up, you have like a crazy view, and also like when the sort of magic hour and the day happens and you get like those crazy colored skies and everything. It's like really beautiful to look at. So yeah, I've been playing more of that. I'm trying to finish it, and the story is pretty interesting. I will see if it leaves the door open for a third. I'm assuming it will. Also, it does a little bit feel like, maybe not in so many words, but they are trying to do something vaguely similar to Mass Effect 2, where it was like, this one's about building your team. And so like you sort of have this like hub area that you keep going back to, and you talk to your different team members. And like even this late in the game, we're like still adding team members to that little grouping and like talking to them, and they may even have like a little mission for you to do. So it's sort of like a lot of people will compare the second movie in a trilogy to like Empire Strikes Back, and they'll be like, oh, this is this trilogy's Empire Strikes Back. I feel like this is the Horizon Mass Effect 2 game.
Oh man.
So I don't know that it doesn't really go as far as like the loyalty missions for your teammates, I don't think. Even though some of them do have missions for you to do, it's not quite on that level, but it feels vaguely similar in terms of like you're putting a team together.
They're not like coming with you though, right?
There are some missions where they're with you, but it's not like Mass Effect where you have like 2 squad members where you go out on a mission and you select the 2 that you want with you. No, but I also assume that there will be some missions later on where like you're still running around by yourself, but like the other characters are there. It'll probably be that kind of a thing. But and then I've played a little bit more Overwatch 2. I've conceded that I'm not going to finish the season pass this time. But they are currently in the middle of what is generally accepted to be the worst Overwatch event of all time.
Oh, really? What is it?
Yeah. So I think we talked about it a little bit off air last week, where their current event is built around this like free-for-all mode that involves like a handful of characters. I think it's like Reinhardt and oh gosh, why am I blanking on his name? The big Roadhog. And then the new character who also has a name. My mind has gone to mush. And then you have Farah and Lucio as the other characters. So there are just like the 5 characters. And it's just like, okay, but like a healer is not going to be a solid choice for
Lucio is a crazy
free-for-all.
choice to include in that.
Yeah, when you're dealing with, you know, a DPS character and 3 tanks, like it's hard to 1v1 anyone with Lucio, but it's especially hard to 1v1 a tank with Lucio. So like it's not even like a well-balanced mix of characters. And also people are complaining about Roadhog because he's like very strong in the current meta. So like it doesn't feel good to play this free-for-all. Plus, like, I never liked free-for-all in Overwatch to begin with because it's such a team-based game that so many of the characters are built around either countering one particular other character or they're just built around team play. And so I guess you could just play, you know, a ton of matches of Roadhog and knock out his like event challenge or whatever to get whatever title or drops you get for doing that. But like even the event challenges are like super grindy. It's like play that mode and get 300 kills as Farah or whatever. It's just like nobody wants to do that. It would take a long time and you'd have to play so much of that mode. And if you're just not into it, then it's like a real drag. But they did try to make it interesting by like giving you like unique ults for that mode. And also there are like pickups around the world, and similar to where you would go pick up like a health pack if your health was low. There are other pickups that will like basically give you your ult that you can get, or it like speeds up the recharging really fast. And so you can use the ult more often, and they are like a little bit different. Like Lucio's, I think you use it and then you have like unlimited fire, so you don't have to reload or something like that. But yeah, it's bad. People don't like it. And so I played like a handful of matches of that, and I was like, I'm good on this. I don't need literally any more of this at all. And so I just went back to playing the normal quick play stuff. But I don't know. I still like Overwatch 2, but I am very hot and cold on it the same way I was with Destiny, where I'll like get into it for a few weeks and then I'll just have no interest for a long time, and then I'll come back to it again. And I think I'm nearing the end of my current level of interest in it, and I might be out for a little while.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, what have you been playing?
Not really been playing anything. I have been watching people play things, though. I've been watching some AGDQ. A couple of ones I wanted to point out. I think these are the ones I recommended last week, but the Breath of the Wild run is crazy because they've added some new tech to the run. It used to be all about like stasising things and jumping on them and then kind of like whipping yourself around the map. But they invented a thing where you're basically, if you hold something and you like go backwards in a certain way, you just fly across the map. And so that completely changed the routing for stuff, because in the original one, I think, or I guess in like in earlier versions of the speedrun, the first thing you wanted to get was stasis, because that allowed you to hop all around. But now the first thing you want to get is bombs, because bombs allow you to always have something to hold. And when you're holding something, you can activate this like glitch. So it's crazy to see. The routing for the Great Plateau is completely different and very interesting. And then when they actually do get to Hyrule Castle, they go in a totally different way than previous ones. And it's just all... It's very interesting. If you're interested in Breath of the Wild, definitely check out the run that happened this week. And then also, Gungrave is something I talked about, I think, last week or the week before. A game that I used to love on PS2 for some reason. I don't know. The music was really great. I remember it after watching this run is why I liked it. But this is a really interesting run. It's not like super mechanically interesting, but the game is just... I forgot how weird the story is. And it has an anime that goes along with it that I've never watched, but I assume is crazy. And then the other one that I watch, I've kind of been watching a bunch of them in a row just to see what I've liked. Sometimes you'll run into one where the runner is not super informative, and even though the game is interesting, you kind of have to skip it because they're not really telling you what you want. But sometimes you'll get a game you're interested in, as well as a very informative runner/couch of people watching them. And one of those was Haiku the Robot, which is a game I loved from last year, and had a really good runner and a really good person commentating. And it's a very short run, because that game is very short. But man, watching it again, I forgot like how similar to Hollow Knight it is. It just takes so many cues from it, and that makes it a really interesting, fun game. And in some ways, I'm not going to say it's better than Hollow Knight, but I will say that I like robots more than bugs. That's like my one criticism of Hollow Knight is like, it's very beautiful and cool, and I love it a lot, but I don't super like bugs in general. Yeah. Whereas like Haiku the Robot, like every one of the NPCs is like a very cute little robot that is like very coolly animated. But that's a great run. If you're looking for like a really nice short and sweet run, the Haiku the Robot run is nice and quick and very interesting. I will say that the Gungrave run is cool, but I think there's a false start in it, as well as the Breath of the Wild run. There's a false start where they have to start over. But there's like time code in the like YouTube video to see, like it'll say like runner introduction starts at this time, and like first run starts, run like resumes at, just start at the run resumes at part, and you can skip all the like technical problems. And then I watched a movie, Zach. Yesterday I got together with some friends. I was telling you before we started recording. And we got together and we watched a movie I got for for Christmas, I should say. I got a DVD about a year ago. You're familiar with those Red Letter Media guys, right?
Yeah.
They put out a best of the worst special spotlight on a movie. And I started watching it. I watched like the first 5 minutes of it, and then I stopped because I was like, man, I need to watch this and like I need to experience it firsthand. So I put it on my wish list, and I forgot about it for like a year. And then my parents got it for me for Christmas because it was just on my Amazon wish list. We got together, me and my friends, and we watched New York Ninja. Have you heard of that?
No.
It's a very...
I must have missed that Red Letter Media video.
It's an interesting... I would recommend not watching that video, actually, because you should watch the movie. It's very interesting. This movie... so like it was all shot in the 80s, but then I think they ran out of funding. So it was never edited together, and also all of the sound for it is like missing or gone. They didn't shoot it with sound back in the day, I guess. I don't really know how like film stuff works, but I guess audio was like recorded differently on a separate thing. So this company bought I guess the reels to it, or they bought a bunch of film stock or whatever from this bankrupt company that it had just been sitting in a warehouse for like 30 years. And they came across all of the footage, all the unedited footage for New York Ninja. And they decided to edit it together and like re-record all the audio, which is a feat because watching this unedited would be insane. This movie, New York Ninja, is a crazy movie that goes a lot of really weird places, but it is, they did it. They found the story. A lot of times you can kind of read people's lips so you kind of know what they're saying, but they found the story. They redubbed all of the audio to what they think people were saying. And now it's a feature-length movie that is maybe one of the best movies I've ever seen.
Really?
It's very good. I don't know if you can get it digitally. So I have the Blu-ray of it now because I got it on Amazon, but if you've seen it, or if you haven't seen it, I wouldn't recommend reading anything about it or watching like a review of it. I would just go watch it, and I would preferably do it with some people, because like it's kind of like a. Did you ever see Miami Connection?
No. Miami
Connection, I think, is a very good comparison, where it is like Miami Connection was a movie similar to this one. The main character is like the star and the writer and like the producer of it. And so they made a crazy kung fu movie back in like the 80s, and then no one heard about it for a long time. With Miami Connection, the reason it came back up is because like someone found like a fully completed version of it in, again, like a warehouse somewhere in like Austin. And so they started doing like midnight movies of it, and people were like, this is the most amazing thing we've ever seen. And so it got a resurgence, and they like put it out on Blu-ray, and now everybody's all about it. But both of these were kind of like hidden gems that like were made and produced in the 80s and then were forgotten for like 30 or 40 years or whatever. And now they're having this big resurgence. But both of those movies, I think, are wonderful classics that should be experienced. So this isn't my parting wisdom, but if you're interested, definitely you can rent Miami Connection on Google Play, I think. I don't know if you can do that for New York Ninja. But if you can't, I would recommend getting it on DVD because it's crazy, Zach. I think you would really like it.
I'm looking it up now, and it looks like it's on Amazon.
Yeah. I got the Blu-ray special edition on Amazon, which is...
Oh, they are aware of it. You can add it to your watch list, but you can't actually watch it directly on Amazon, unfortunately.
I hate when that happens, because you can search for stuff, and they're like, oh, yeah, this movie, we can check this out. It's right here. And then you click, and it's like currently unavailable.
Oh, if you have a Showtime trial. That's lame.
I gotta say, it's a hard recommendation for me. I would say a double feature. If you're getting together with some friends, an amazing double feature would be Miami Connection and then New York Ninja. And I actually don't know which one I like more because they're both so good. But both of them are just top-notch 80s movies that truly go insane places and have crazy acting in them.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm going to have to watch those for sure. What is your parting wisdom?
I feel like, and I have no reason to believe this, but I feel like we're going to get some Hollow Knight Silksong news soon.
What makes you say that?
I don't know. I just have this vibe that, like, I feel like it's time.
I mean, it's long past time, but...
True. I don't know.
guess,
On the Silksong subreddit, people are always speculating about release dates, and a lot of people are saying, they're gonna want to do something in February. I don't know why they came up with that, but they were like, "Oh yeah, it's definitely gonna be February." And so I feel like by the end of January, we might have a release date, and it could be in February. Oh, you know what it is? It's because I just bought. You told me about that Hollow Knight Switch edition that you bought with that map, and I also just bought that, and so that's I think why I've got it on the brain.
Well, so here's a crazy conspiracy theory. The January 25th game showcase from Xbox, what if the one more thing to that is Silksong with a release date?
Now that would be crazy. I would love that. But I guess we'll see. I mean, they said and more games, right? They didn't say just like these publishers. They were like, this is going to be a showcase of these specific publishers and also other things, right?
I'm trying to find the exact wording because I don't remember that, but maybe they did.
I'm pretty sure it ended with and more. That would be great. I feel like we're so close to it, Zach. I'm ramped up on it.
So that would be my first bet if I were betting on where it would show up would be an Xbox one, just because I feel like it's been shown at Xbox things.
It's been shown on Directs though. Also, I feel like no one truly owns the Silksong announcement. I feel like they could do it on their own if they wanted to.
Well, and so the other option I was going to point out was I'm sure Nintendo's got a Nintendo Direct for like, usually they will do one in the first half of the year that's like, here's what's coming this summer.
Yeah.
Or the first half of the year or whatever.
True.
I'm sure they will do one of those, maybe even in February.
If they do a Direct that is Silksong related and Tears of the Kingdom related, and we get both of those info dumps and a release date for Silksong in the same Direct, that's going to be a Direct for the ages that'll be talked about for years.
It will be the Nintendo Direct to end all Nintendo Directs.
Yeah.
I don't know if that will be the case, but maybe.
I got the vibe like it's going to happen.
When would your release date guess be?
I don't think it's going to be in February. But I could see April.
I'm still like crossing my fingers that this Starfield thing, like they do their deep dive like shortly after this other one that they're going to do. And then they're like, oh yeah, this is coming in March.
Yeah, I think March is a very safe bet for Starfield, but they got to give us time to pre-order it. Like, I feel like they really need to get ahead of that and just be like, start buying it right now so they can have their record sales numbers. And so every day we go without them announcing pre-orders is a day where I feel like it's going to take longer to get there.
So how much time is there between past E3 and like whenever they would release stuff? So like November.
Well, I mean,
probably
the quickest turnaround I feel like wasn't Fallout 4. Like, here is our deep dive on Fallout 4 at our Bethesda press conference, and also it's coming out in like August.
No, I did it come out in August?
I feel like it came out super
always
quick.
Release. I know, like it did. It was like, here's the announcement of the game, and also it's coming out this fall.
Yeah, that was crazy because it was like the first time we'd ever heard of it.
But I don't think it was August. I feel like that was too early.
Oh, you're right.
Usually they release stuff in November.
Yeah, it was November 10th. Yeah, 2015.
So I don't know if it'll be different this time. I mean, it probably will be, but I mean, however many months between that announcement and that drop, I feel like you could probably speculate that if they do a deep dive here in like maybe the first week of February on Starfield, add like 6 months onto that.
Yeah, 6
Although
months.
They said first half of the year. So
yeah, they said it has to happen before like June would be the 6th month.
You'd think. I don't know. I feel like they're also a little bit trying to avoid Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to release even within like a month after.
It would hurt both of their
Breath of
bottom
the Wild.
lines for sure.
Yeah. But I mean, same thing for Silksong. I mean, maybe because they're an indie game, they're a little bit immune.
I think it's more
that,
niche. Yeah, I think that it could release whenever. I mean, obviously they don't want to release on the day that Breath of the Wild comes out. That would hurt them the most, probably. But I still, man, I think you asked me this question like last year at some point, but I still don't know if Breath of the Wild and Silksong came out on the same day. I don't know which. I think I would do Silksong first.
Well, so let's go full chaos. Let's say Starfield, Tears of the Kingdom, and Silksong all release on the same day. Which one are you going to first?
I kind of would do Silksong. I mean, well, I don't know. It's so hard to know because I have a deep desire to dive into the character builder for Starfield and like start creating my character and just to see how deep that is and to see the first. I mean, Bethesda does a great job of the like first like 5-hour tutorial, not even 5 hours, but like their tutorials are great. And they like, Todd Howard said there's like 2 like walking out the door moments, which I think we all assume are like walking out the door of the first planet and then getting your starship and walking out into the whole solar system. Mm-hmm. And so I think that like, the first hours of Starfield are going to be very good. And so it's hard to deny that. But I also think that the entire experience of Silksong is going to be great.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to shortchange Tears of the Kingdom because I think that'll be great and probably will end up being like the game of the year for the vast majority of people. But I do think I would probably start Starfield first.
Yeah. It's hard. I mean, hopefully we don't have to make that Sophie's choice.
Yeah. I mean, I am a little bit outlining an insane situation that will never actually happen, but you gotta have answers to these questions.
It's true.
Just in case you're presented with complete chaos, how would you react?
Yeah.
And that'd be how I would do it. But my parting wisdom, I actually have a little bit of parting wisdom. I've been doing my spring cleaning in January. Yeah. And I think there's like an office line where they do that one time. They're like, you know what you don't have to do in the spring if you do your spring cleaning in January? Anything. And so I have like gone through my cabinets. I had some old dishes and mugs and stuff that like I have too many mugs. And I boxed up a bunch of stuff and clothes and just old stuff that I have around, and I took it to Goodwill, got it out of the house, freed up some space, and it felt good to just like clear out some stuff. And so I recommend doing your spring cleaning in January.
A great tip.
And on that note, why don't you go ahead and follow us on all the things, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube at Starside Cafe. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.